Hi everyone! So, I wanted to make a quick video about the new Civilization 7 update 1.1.1 released today, and we're going to talk about what's in it and how I feel about it. And my opinion is probably going to be very similar for most of the additions here, which is that, yeah, that's nice, but it should have been there on release. So I'm probably going to repeat myself in that regard, just a heads up, but that's mostly because it's true. Anyway, the next update after this is currently planned for April, and according to the roadmap, this is what the next update is going to have, in April. But, back to 1.1.1, let's get straight to it. So first of all, they are finally adding a quick move, but not quick combat apparently. I have seen quite a few comments claiming that quick combat is not actually possible in Civ 7, and supposedly that's something the developers themselves said on one of the live streams. I haven't been able to find a statement like that, but, well, it might be true. I haven't watched most of the live streams. Either way, it's just quick move, not quick combat. Next up, map generation. They are adding a brand new start position option as the default, called Standard. This option is closer to what players remember from Civilization 6, where continents have a bit more variety and are less predictable. The existing start position method is now called Balanced, and can be selected again at any point in advanced options. Balanced will remain the default option in multiplayer. We have plenty more planned for map variety generation and the new maps, including larger maps. Yeah, larger maps will not be added until later. The biggest map we can play right now, outside of mods, is still standard size. It is possible to enable larger maps through mods, however, that does come with some problems regarding the AI players. You have to handpick them on really big maps, because the game doesn't really handle duplicate leaders right now. Either way, this is obviously a good change, should have been there on the release. Again, I'm probably going to say this quite a few times because it's true. One thing to keep in mind though, there is still going to be like an invisible vertical wall on the map, because that's kind of unavoidable due to the nature of the age system and the distant lands. I don't think that's possible to fix or change, again, due to the nature of the game. But yeah, again, obviously this is a good change. It's a shame we have to wait even longer for a bigger map variety. One of the things I enjoyed the most about the late stage Civilization 6 is the massive map variety that it had in various mods. Some of my favorite Civilization 6 mods were map mods, like the Goth Lakes mod. That one was actually crazy. You could make some really wild maps with that mod. And also mods like Alternate Cartography. That one had some really fun map scripts. So map variety is something that I really like to see in Civilization games, and it's still very much lacking in Civilization 7. But it's good to see that it's moving in the right direction. Anyway, next up, settlement and commander renaming. So you will now be able to rename army commanders and your settlements. Again, something that should have been there on the release. Not much more to say about that. It's a good thing that we're getting it now. UI improvements. So improve unit flag and health bar visibility. This is obviously a very good change. This was one of my bigger complaints UI-wise, basically from the moment I started playing, weeks before actual release. I am currently using a mod that makes unit flags bigger, but adding this outline is definitely a very good thing. One thing that's still missing, as far as I'm aware, is making the outline red if you are at war with that civilization. It is red for city-state units if those city-states are hostile towards you, so that functionality already exists in the game for neutral settlements, but it doesn't exist for other players, which is kind of weird. But either way, obviously a good change, again, should have been there on the release, but I digress. Improved plot tooltips. We've improved the tooltip on plots to include how many specialists are assigned and are still possible to assign. Well, obviously a good change, not much more to say about that. New district under attack notification. You are now alerted when your districts are under attack with a notification, which we hope means less surprises. Yeah, this is, again, obviously a very good change. It was entirely possible to not even notice you were under attack until either you lost a settlement or lost a unit. So obviously this is a good change. And this is something that annoyed me from the moment I started playing originally. New trade lanes and the ability to send merchants from lanes. You can now see your available trade routes by triggering a new lanes on-off from the lanes panel. You can also send the merchants directly to cities from the panel in any age. But remember, in those earlier ages, you still have to start the route when you get there. Yeah, I mean, obviously a good change. Also, you can see the unit outline on the screenshot a little bit better than on the previous one. Obviously a very good change there with the unit visibility. Again, should have been there on day one. Same with this merchant lens, this should have been there from the start. I know I'm gonna repeat myself with that, but I mean, it's true, okay? It's true. Next up, age progress now shows turns remaining until crisis. Well, obviously a good change, not much more to say about that. I actually play with crisis disabled. For the most part, I'm not really a big fan of how the crisis system works, although I've gone back and forth about it. Anyway, obviously a good change here. Restart button. So there is now a restart button which can be used within the first few turns of a new game to restart the map with the same exact settings. So this is, again, obviously a good thing. And I do like that you can restart within the first few turns and not just on turn 1. So credit where credit is due. It's not just on turn 1, but within the first few turns. Which means that you can check your general surroundings and then decide whether to restart with the same settings or not. So yeah, a very good implementation of this. So again, credit where credit is due. And these are just highlights, so be sure to check out the full list of UI improvements in the update notes below. And here are the actual full update notes. We can go through them real quick. I won't be reading like all of them already here in this video. One change that I have mixed feelings about is this Railroad Tycoon change. And this is actually a very interesting case with Railroad Tycoon, because I've seen quite a lot of comments with people saying it's the easiest victory condition, and I've also seen a lot of comments with people saying it's the hardest victory condition. I don't think it actually scales with map size, but I would have to double check, which I think explains this discrepancy, because it's going to be much easier to do this on a bigger map where there are more resources. You will likely have more cities, therefore access to more factory resources, and it will be harder on smaller maps if it doesn't scale, which I don't think it does. I would have to double check. So if you know whether this scales with map size or not, let me know in the comments. I actually genuinely don't know offhand. There are some changes to leaders. Lafayette got nerfed, but he's still going to be very powerful, with a +1 combat strength per tradition slotted in, but it is no longer doubled in distant lands. Same with the culture and happiness bonus, that is also no longer doubled. The culture and happiness bonus also got nerfed from +2 to +1, but it is still doubled in distant lands. Carthage got fixed, or at least so it seems, because previously it would give you extra combat strength for any resource slotted in your capital, like any resource at all, including duplicates, including every type of resource, so you could get ridiculously high combat strength on the Numidian cavalry. So that seemingly got fixed here, which is obviously a good thing. Hawaii got nerfed a little bit, and this is a good thing, because you could get ridiculously high culture playing as Hawaii. In fact, I have an older video on my channel where I did exactly that. And I wasn't even min-maxing it very hard in that video. One of the traditions will now give food instead of culture. And the tradition that gives them culture on marine terrain will now be +1 instead of +2. And the civic mastery that gives them culture in settlements following their religion on marine terrain will now give happiness on marine terrain. So overall, you will get a lot less culture on marine terrain playing as Hawaii. There are a bunch of other changes here. I think the most notable one is the Maya one. So now the production gain is reduced from 15% of the technology researched to just 5%. This is a very good change because the Maya was a ridiculously overpowered civilization. So it's a good thing that they changed this. The Roman legion also got nerfed a little bit, changed from +2 combat strength for every tradition to +1 combat strength for every tradition. This is again a good change, a very good change, because you could get ridiculously high combat strength on the Legion. You can still get very high combat strength on the Legion, so this does not mean it's a bad bonus. It's still a really, really good bonus. It's just not ridiculously broken anymore. So there are a few other, I would say, notable changes down here. One of them is the way AI handles the army commanders. Apparently, they were not even getting the correct bonus XP based on difficulty previously. Now they will. 80% on Immortal, 100% on Deity, and that they will supposedly make better promotion choices. We'll see about that. Obviously, a good change, because AI's handling of army commanders was really, really, really bad, and that should improve that, obviously. Here's a very interesting change. Towns with a trade outpost focus will now grant +5 trade range to all of your other settlements and not just for themselves. A very good change. This will now be a very good reason to have the trade outpost in one of your settlements. They did fix the scout bug, where they would just constantly gain +1 side range when unpacking them from the commander with the initiative promotion. And you could actually take this to a ridiculous degree, where you could reveal the entire map with one scout. So that will no longer work. One interesting change is the Torres del Paine change. So this is a very drastic change here. It will no longer grant units the ability to ignore rough terrain. It will now give you +1 food and production on the tundra terrain in this settlement. So that's actually pretty damn nice. Honestly, anything that grants you extra production is very powerful in Civilization 7, because, well, production is incredibly important in Civilization 7. I would say more important than any previous Civilization game. Way more important than in 6. Here's another good change. Players are now correctly notified when a pact commander was attacked. A very good change, because your pact commander could get attacked and you would not get any notification about that, which was a very bad thing. Also, notifications now properly play their animations at the start of a new turn. Very good fix right there. Increase the speed at which notifications appear during gameplay. Again, very good change, especially for turns where not much is happening. Anyway, there are a whole bunch of other changes here. One of the funniest one is over here. The war weariness score will no longer be forcibly attributed to a different leader during a first meet. I just find that one to be kind of hilarious. Here's another interesting note. The following events can now be triggered, and it lists 5 different events. So to me that implies that these events already existed but couldn't be triggered. That's the implication of this patch note to me, which is kind of odd and funny, but well, here we are anyway. And finally, if you have crossroads of the world, you will now have the new leader, summon Bolivar, you will have the new civilization, Bulgaria, in Exploration Age, and the new modern civilization, Nepal. Bolivar does sound pretty interesting. Gain a free amount of support on your wars. It doesn't specify what exactly this means, but potentially pretty powerful. Also, when you conquer a settlement for the first time, it can purchase a building for free. Does that mean literally any building, or even a very expensive one? Perhaps. So, sounds pretty decent, potentially. And you can also purchase items when in unrest status. Now, this one is very, very strong. This is a very strong ability. Especially since, unless the patch changed it, and I didn't see anything about that, the unrest period does not scale with game speed. So if you're playing on the quick or online game speed, the duration of the unrest period will be exactly the same as on standard speed. So this is a much more powerful ability if you're playing on a quick or online speed. But even if you're not, it's still a very powerful ability. So Bulgaria receives food in all towns when pillaging improvements, equal to a percentage of the HP or yields gained. This sounds pretty good, potentially. Need to really test it to see how it plays out. Obviously, you want to play aggressively and go to war and actually attack people to take advantage of this. There are no details here about their unique units, so can't really comment about that. And for Nepal, all warehouse buildings apply to mountain tiles, but they cost increased food and happiness maintenance. So yeah, obviously this one is very situational. If you have a lot of mountains, this could potentially be decent, but I don't think it's that amazing, especially in modern age, because this is a modern age civilization. Anyhow, that's all I have to say about this patch. So yeah, like most of this patch is, like I said earlier, nice, but it should have been there on the release kind of thing for me. And here's the thing. Judging from the Steam concurrent player numbers, I'm obviously not the only one who feels that way. Civilization 5 is currently above Civilization 7, not just in concurrent players, but also in terms of the daily 24-hour peak. And obviously in terms of the all-time peak. So it doesn't look great. And also, furthermore, the recent reviews, which is reviews in the last 30 days, are down to 43% positives. Below 40%, it will drop to mostly negative. So it's going down, because it was at like 49-50%. And now the recent reviews are at 43%. And the crossroads of the world itself is at 11% and overwhelmingly negative in the last 30 days. I imagine this is primarily because Civilization 7 as a game still feels very much unfinished, and a lot of the additions in the patches are things that people feel should have been there on the release. So they're not very happy about the fact this is a $30 DLC that doesn't even add a whole lot. You just get a handful of civilizations and leaders, and you pay almost half of the full game price. But anyway, that's all I had to say about this video. When there are further patches, I will probably talk about those as well. I will likely check out this update and see how it plays. But I currently have very ambivalent feelings about Civilization 7. So, I mean, I don't hate Civilization 7, but I'm also not really that excited about playing it right now, if that makes sense. I'm just kind of at the point where I don't really care that much until the game is in a more finished state, which I feel like will still take a while. Especially if we go back to the roadmap over here. The 1.2 update will have research queuing, which is something that, I mean, should have been there on day one. It kind of blows my mind that it isn't. One more turn option in modern age, additional UI updates, multiplayer teams, new resource types, and updates to resource map allocation. And then the further updates beyond that will have additional map sizes, again, something that really should have been there on day one, modding tools, which also includes Steam Workshop support, so we are not getting Steam Workshop support until beyond April, so May or further than that. Hot Seat multiplayer, I don't really care too much about Hot Seat, but I imagine a lot of people do. And I've actually seen a comment that Auto-Explore will no longer be a thing. It's no longer under consideration and will not be added. I have to look up the exact source of that, but yeah, apparently this is no longer going to be a thing. Anyway, that's it for this video, so thanks for watching. I hope you found it useful and informative, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.